In 1942, a man named Wilbert Awdry was taking care of his 3-year-old son Christopher, who was bedridden with the measles. Wilbert was a clergyman, but he was also something of a railway enthusiast, spending his whole life growing up around steam engines, and even imagining what sorts of things they'd say to each other whenever he'd observe one pushing another up a hill. Seeing so much life in these machines, and being an enthusiast himself, it was only natural that he'd tell stories to his son about engines. And so he did, and the first ever ones were ones about Edward, Gordon, and Henry. The stories touched Christopher's heart, and he wanted to hear them over and over again, even after he had gotten better. It was also around this era Christopher was gifted a little wooden model of Edward. He wanted one of Gordon too, but Gordon proved too hard to do. So Wilbert thought of another idea, and made a little blue tank engine for Christopher numbered 1, as it was the easiest number to paint. Come 1945, through the encouragement of his children and spouse, the stories of Edward, Gordon, and Henry would be published and start the Railway series. A year after that, Wilbert would publish stories about the little wooden engine he had gifted his son. Said stories would be the world's introduction to Thomas the Tank Engine himself. Since then, Thomas has been dubbed in 40 languages, has been broadcast in 160 global territories, has won countless awards over the many, many decades it's been on air, had its own theatrical movie adaptation and 13 direct-to-DVD specials, 24 seasons, several spin-offs, 2 reboots, and most importantly of all, it's made millions and millions of children happy for 81 years. And I am very happy to have been one of those children. This is a bit more of a personal video. I don't normally like to upload back-to-back this quickly because I like to give the previous video time to marinate. But before we get into the subject matter of today's video, I have a Q&A currently going on, so if you guys want to check the description or check the pinned comment for my community post asking for questions, you can go ahead and fill that out. If you're a returning subscriber or someone new who just wants to take part in the 1,000 subscribers Q&A, thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers again. But yeah, thank you, and on to today's video. My relationship with Thomas started about the same as any other kid. From my time, you know, I say my time even though I'm only 20 years old, going on 21, but yeah, I grew up with the Thomas the Tank Engine DVDs. I had all of the classic series for the most part, all of the hit era for the most part. I had some of the early Nitrogen stuff. I also, I believe I had all the way up till King of the Railway, because around King of the Railway, that's when I started watching Thomas stuff on YouTube. And so King of the Railway was really the last, newest DVD I got. But I did get some of that Brenner era stuff on DVD. I believe I have some of season 17 on DVD, I believe. Maybe season 18 too. It's a little fuzzy, but you know. But yeah, I remember growing up watching Thomas the Tank Engine on DVD. There are loads of pictures of me sitting in front of that box TV, you know, looking at Sir Topham Hatt or looking at the engines go by and playing with my Trackmaster toys, my wooden railways, my take-along, you know, Lego Duplo. I had some Lego Duplo too. What a throwback that is. But yeah, I loved the Thomas the Tank Engine series. I loved the classic model era that was directed by David Mitton, and you know, largely the creative vision of both him and Britt, the brilliant TV producer who stepped up to adapt Wilbert Awdry's timeless stories into a phenomenal work of television. And I admittedly am also quite a big fan of the hit era. You know, my idol, the Unlucky Tug, he's not too big on it, understandably so, because he grew up around the season 3 era. But you know, I was deep in the hit era. One of my earliest memories actually was watching Percy and the Magic Carpet, an episode I have on DVD, and also one of my favorite episodes, even though it's a rather silly episode concept. I really loved playing with the Thomas the Tank Engine toys, and I also really loved going to Day Out with Thomas events. I remember taking that long drive out to Strasburg, Pennsylvania. Not terribly long because I live in Maryland, so it's not that long of a drive. To put it into perspective for you guys who are local or, you know, understand the geography of it, I live near the Washington, D.C. area, and, you know, so there wasn't really that long of a drive in American terms, but, you know, we would take the drive up there, we would see Thomas and take pictures with him and go on a little ride up the line to the junction where it would meet up with the Amtrak main line, the Keystone Corridor. And you know, I would always remember being so locked in and so fascinated by being on the train, and it's a feeling I still feel now with trains that can be traced back to all of this. a sense of comfort I get traveling by train, and also a sense of happiness. And that love for public transit and urban planning and all that stuff I advocate for so strongly now can be traced back to Thomas. And, going back to the Day Out with Thomas events, I remember going to the gift shop and getting all sorts of things. I got my Trackmaster Duke from the gift shop. I also, got a picture of me um and my brother in one of those like little kiddie rides that used to take the nickel. You remember those from back in the day? I was in one of those, except there was a Thomas themed one, and it was awesome. And I'm not sure if it's still there. I think it is, but that was great. And those Day Out with Thomas memories were really awesome. I would also watch Thomas on Sprout and PBS Kids, if you guys remember those. I remember the late night program they would do on Sprout, where they would do the little bumpers and Thomas would come on, and it would usually be the CGI animated Thomas, but the bumper would still show like that one promo picture of Thomas from season 2. So, that memory is baked into my brain. And yeah, I just have so many fond memories with this franchise. I remember playing with my Tomy trains. I really gravitated towards the Tomy trains because at the time, and even still now, I believe that they were the best representation of the magic of Thomas. Because the wooden railway trains, they were generational, you know what I mean? They were versatile. You could play with them on the carpet. You could play with them on their track system. They were very durable because, they're made of wood. I like the wooden trains a lot. I went through a lot of wooden train phases. But I really gravitated towards the Tomy trains and the Trackmaster trains because they could move on their own. You put a battery in them, they could move on their own. They had the side rods. And even if you didn't want to play with them in that way, you could roll them around. You could freewheel them because there was no like locked gearbox. You could just have fun with it. You could play with it however you want to play with it. You could push them around. You could puppeteer them with a string. You could put the battery in them. You could do all sorts of hacks to make them go backwards with the tinfoil, or you could 9-volt battery that stuff and make them go super fast. Most of us Thomas fans, we all did this stuff back in the day. It was really fun. And I remember all the Thomas YouTubers I used to grow up watching, some of which are my peers in the community now, who I've spoken to many times. What an honor it is to speak to them, by the way. But, I grew up on Keek Ray 24 Studios, Diesel D199, Rama Fool, Enterprising Engines 93, the older content made by Leo Henry, UC Weapon, Trackmaster, Toy Village, Toy Trains for You, Hugo Loves Trains, the whole shebang. I grew up on all these people, really. Wooden Railway Reviews, Mr. Conductor fan, of course. Eric Pierre 53, Turtles and Thomas. That's a name a lot of you probably haven't heard in a long time as well. But, I grew up on all this stuff, whether it be as a super little kid or as a middle schooler or even as an early high schooler. I grew up on all this stuff, and I continue to grow up with it because I've been in this community a really long time. When it comes to the YouTube Thomas community, I sort of discovered it the same way anyone else really discovers it. I was a kid who liked trains, so I would watch these Microsoft train simulator crashes, and I would find like those really old MST Noodle Thomas crash videos and like accidents happen type stuff, and I'd be watching that, and that was sort of a pipeline to find stuff like Thomas and the Killer Cars, or O1 Salty's viral video he made, Thomas Blows His Stack. Yeah, that sort of content. And it was also around this time I would find Leo Kim videos Mad Bomber, which I found that like maybe before I was even in kindergarten. I was super young because I remember I made a comic or something referencing it in first grade, so I must have found it like way before then. But yeah, I remember the Mad Bomber behind the scenes videos coming out, pre-2013. I still remember the day the very last one was posted. So yeah, Mad Bomber, I knew about that one for a very long time. That's one of the few Thomas videos I've shown all my friends. I showed my friend Jonathan, I showed Ricky, I showed Jordan, JC, as you guys know him. And yeah, the Thomas the Tank Engine YouTube scene really inspired me because people were doing all sorts of things. People like Enterprising Engines and Keek Ray, they were doing like these wooden railway series. Enterprising Engines did his series outside. Keek Ray did his in his living room and later a basement. And Leo Can Video would do like these elaborate sets and pyrotechnics with the Erdl trains, and even after he stopped doing that, he would do these toy reviews, which were so extravagant and so grand. And he was someone who really understood what Thomas was and what Thomas needed, despite not even being a traditional Thomas fan. Leo only got into it because he was in a film club and he wanted to do a model film for a video contest that he was in. And there was a plethora of Erdl Thomas trains. Erdl Thomas trains in his area, his local market, because he's Australian, and he went into the local market and there were a bunch of these Erdl Thomas trains there at the time. So he bought up a bunch of them and he made that viral Mad Bomber video in his garage, and that's still a staple of the Thomas the Tank Engine community to this day. And as is the works of everyone else I mentioned as well, because their videos all really inspired me. And the Thomas community, a lot of people have a lot of things to say about it, but the way I choose to look at it is I love the Thomas community. And, every internet fandom has its bad apples, I mean, in my opinion, if you're like a kid with unlimited internet access, or someone who spends a lot of time online instead of in the real world, certain things get blown out of proportion. You know what I mean? I would know. I was in that scene. It is what it is. But genuinely speaking, the Thomas fandom is one of the most creative and passionate fandoms you will ever come across. I have been talking a lot about Thomas in real life since maybe the past 3 or 4 years. I've really been opening up about it more. Throughout my time in high school, I opened up about it a lot. And in college, I've especially opened up about it. And the number one thing that people are always surprised about is just how deep this Thomas stuff goes. The lore that Reverend Awdry wrote, the vision that Britt, Allcroft, and David Mitton wrote, had. And even further than that, the stuff that Andrew Brenner and that whole team that they were trying to do, the whole CGI era, really, there's always been layers to this stuff. I'm not trying to say it's some type of super deep, complex thing, but at the same time, it's not slop. There was serious thought put into it, and that thought translated to the fan community. I have always been so inspired by the creativity in the Thomas fan community. Like I said, I was a big fan of Diesel D199, Enterprising Engines, Trainboy 54, Rama Fool, Leo Henry, UC Weapon, all these people, all these names, Toy Trains for You. I could go on for hours naming all the people in the fandom who've inspired me. Some of them here, some of them gone now, some of them controversial, some of them never even gotten into any controversy. But, the fact of the matter is that they're all people who made me who I am, and I love all their work for it. I've been in all corners of the Thomas fandom. I've been on DeviantArt making sprites and writing little journal entries about my OCs. I've been on YouTube, consuming content and engaging with all these big moments and watching the crossover reviews the Wooden Railway guys used to do, watching the Unlucky Tug's oldest videos. Well, now they seem really ancient, the videos he did back in 2015, 2016. If you think about it, it's kind of interesting because those are the videos that really got him popular. That's the whole reason his return in 2020 was such a big thing. But now his stuff is like so grand and so mainstream and bigger than it ever was that you sometimes forget that he was doing stuff before the big return. That it's just crazy to think about. But tangent aside, sorry, this video is going to be all over the place, but I love the Thomas community, and Thomas is one of the big reasons that I wanted to be a YouTuber. I have a lot of inspirations and reasons for becoming a YouTuber. Very early on, I was inspired by Minecraft, actually, to become a YouTuber. I discovered Minecraft in maybe 2013, 2014. I want to say 2013 through popular MMOs. Retired Minecraft YouTuber, got into a lot of controversies. I feel a lot of things related to him now, but back then, he was a staple of my Minecraft phase, and it was through him I discovered all these other people such as Sunday, Craner, Dan, I Has Cupcake, LD Shadow Lady, all these people from the old days, Captain Sparkles, all these people from the old days, Team Crafted, all these other people, Preston's group back in the day. I could go on. Those people really inspired me to make YouTube videos, but there was also the Thomas people who really inspired me, because seeing people make videos with their toys and seeing people make these customs, you know, the customs as in like custom toys they painted up themselves. A-Duck Productions, I saw a lot of his customs, and, you know, UC Weapon, like I mentioned, Trainboy 54. I'm a Trainboy 54 fan. A lot of my current audience, who are people I know in real life or people who aren't Thomas fans, that name probably means nothing to you, but to the Thomas fans who do watch my videos, just know that this is not a page to hate Trainboy 54. I love him. I love John. I love the stuff he makes. And it was really unfair that he was a victim of the early internet, make fun of a severely autistic man. You know, Trainboy 54 was a really creative guy, and he's still making stuff, actually. So, you know, I'm glad for that. And he was a big inspiration for me. I actually have some customs based on customs that he did. And I really, really owe a lot of my creativity and a lot of my growth as an artist to the Thomas Fandom, because the Thomas Fandom was my gateway into wanting to write stories and wanting to film things and wanting to edit. I owe it all to the people I watched when I was a kid on the family computer. My family computer was located in my parents' closet, because we lived in an apartment, but still the same apartment I record videos in. And that was where our family computer was from perhaps when I was a very little kid, probably when we first got into this apartment, all the way up until maybe 2018, 2017. I would stay up watching Thomas movies that were ripped onto YouTube, Enterprising Engines 93 videos, Leokin video toy reviews, UC Weapon unboxings, Hank the American Engine videos. I'd be watching all sorts of things on there. I'd be watching those like sprite animations. I think his name was James Fan 1991. He would do like these sprite animations. He had a series where his island of Sodor was just bloated. He had all these OCs, all these Thomas characters, some OCs based off of Fireman Sam characters, Transformers characters. I think his roster of engines when I was a kid was already in the triple digits. I have no idea what that roster looks like now, but he was an inspiration to me, you know? He was an inspiration to me. I loved watching his videos a lot, and that sort of relationship I had was what made me want to film Thomas videos on my own. And I think it actually wasn't until maybe, I want to say 2015, 2016, when I actually filmed my own Thomas videos. I didn't really post them. I was just kind of like filming stuff for fun. My own sort of Thomas videos, like of my Tomy layout. I had this Tomy layout that I would make on our dining room table, because we don't have a dining room, it's an apartment. But we had a dining table, and I would build my layout on it. There's actually still paint stains on that dining room table to this day from my younger years of making customs and playing with my Tomy trains on that layout. And like I said, Tomy Trackmaster was my favorite range for the longest time. I loved how the characters could just move on their own. I loved watching them haul long lines of trucks. I loved putting rakes of coaches behind them. I loved setting two trains on different tracks, watching them pass each other, switching the points, you know, the buffer stops that came with that Tomy Thomas freight set, the little stop and go things, the little interactive sets. Trackmaster was in their bag, okay, with these sets from like 2007, 2008 when they started up until 2013, you know, right before Mattel ruined it all. They were in their bag with these sets. The Misty Island set, never owned it, but it looked really fun. Action Canyon, again, never owned it, but that one was everywhere. That was a fan favorite. I owned the Blue Mountain Mystery and King of the Railway sets. Those were phenomenal, like so much fun. I got so much mileage out of those sets. Shout out to Leokin Video and Trainboy 54 and UC Weapon and all these Trackmaster users who put me onto this stuff, because obviously I already had it, but they were the ones that really like exploded it in my mind. That love of that range and Thomas in general really stuck with me, and there was never really a period in my life where I didn't love Thomas. There was a phase, I believe, where I was really into Minecraft for a year, because that was when I first got into Minecraft. I was drawing Minecraft all the time. My childhood best friend Akil and I were doing this like a Minecraft roleplay series like at recess, and my childhood best friend Jordan would hop in there too, and it would become like this big improv thing with the three of us, where we would be like, we called ourselves the losers, and we did these like Minecraft role plays, and it was really funny stuff. But that was really the only period where something was more prominent in my life than Thomas, because Thomas was always a through line in my life, and I always knew that this was going to be something that would last. I mean, there were times where I thought to myself, is there going to be a time where I'm not this Thomas kid? But truthfully speaking, I don't think so. I think I'll always be that Thomas kid. I'll always be excited when that theme song comes on. I'll always be smiling, looking at this guy. Even though as a super fan, I of course know he's not all that nice a guy, but I don't care. I'm still his biggest fan. If he was real, I would never tell him that, because I would big up his already massive head, both literally and metaphorically. But I love Thomas. And as far as my own personal YouTube journey goes, that's in the Thomas community, my first proper channel was back in 2017. I was doing this series about Splatter. Splatter was an obscure Thomas character from the theatrical film Thomas and the Magic Railroad, and I was doing this series about him, and that was fun for a while. I did that series for a long time. I met one of my best internet friends through that series, and through him, I met a bunch of other people, such as Dane, Cheeky Chuffer, Monty, who is currently back doing videos. He does the Solar New Adventure stuff. I met Murdo and Daniel, Andrew, all these people, and more. Mari, I met them through Thomas, and I met them through doing the YouTube stuff. And I did that YouTube channel for a few years. It fizzled out around quarantine because I was going through some stuff, and there were a lot of, it kind of reached its natural end at the time. And it wasn't until a few years later in 2023 where I would get a new idea for a YouTube channel. It was an evolution of several ideas I had for, in years prior. But 2023, that was when I parked the Kagamin's Wonderland channel. And Kagamin being this girl right here, actually. I don't think I've officially said that in the video, but Kagamin Kawa is a reference to Kagami from Lucky Star, and Kagami, the author of Lucky Star. It was a reference to that. But yeah, that's how this YouTube channel came to be. And originally I was going to do like my own sort of like Thomas adjacent series with my friends as characters. My friend Dana at the time was going to be this character in it, this train character. And, my train, some of them was in it as well. The little green guy who's my channel profile picture now. We'll talk about that most likely in the Q&A. But the point is, I was going to do a series called Wonderland Railroad series, and that series was going to be, what was going to be on this channel. But plans changed when I fell out with the Dana person who I named the train after, and that channel sat dormant for a while until my friend who had inspired me to make the channel that I did the Splatter stuff on, he influenced me to do this channel right here and do my series with the toys. Because originally I was going to do my series Rolling Around on Sodor as a series of audio stories, or I was going to branch off into something else like Tomy or actual models. But he came along and he was like, dude, you did a really good job with the toys on your old channel, and you should really just stick with what you know and build upon that. And I thank this friend so much for that contribution, because I have been so happy doing the stuff with the toys, and it's been fun making customs again, and it's been fun making the type of Thomas videos that I like, because when I was young, people made videos kind of like how I made them, chill, laid back, not overly edited. Like, here's the custom of the day, here's the toy of the day, here's the review, here's the big, thing with the Thomas stuff, and it's no one's fault that this genre died. It's just a matter of, well, actually, if you really want to get there, It's probably Mattel's fault, but let's not even open that can of worms. Back then, there were so many different Thomas toy lines, and that bred so much creativity because people had their favorite toy lines. There were so many Taken Place series, so many Wooden Railway series, so many Trackmaster series, so many Trains series, the video game. There were so many Thomas series of many different kinds. And now, even though there's still so many creative Thomas stuff out there, the toy scene of it is a lot quieter, in my opinion. The only people who are still really doing the toy stuff, from what I could tell, are the people who have always been doing it. Enterprising Engines, like I mentioned, and some of those other people like Tramway 54 still around doing that same stuff they've always been doing. And the big thing for me in this channel was bringing back that old school vibe, bringing back that classic YouTube vibe, especially when it comes to the Thomas content. And as I sit here posting this on the day of the 81st anniversary, I just want to sit here and give a message to all of you about my relationship with Thomas and what it means to me. And what it means to me is, it is such a beautiful thing and such a rich thing, and it is a gateway to so many different things. Thomas is a gateway into filmmaking, it's a gateway into modeling, it's a gateway into art, as you've seen with me, making the customs and paintings and drawings and cardboard crafts. It is a gateway into friendships. I have used my love of Thomas to strengthen friendships by sharing it with others and getting them involved in what I love and getting involved in what they love. Because, I talk about Thomas, they talk about video games or music or anime or something. It's a mutual connection there. And it's also nostalgic for a lot of people, because when I talk about Thomas or Chuggington or it makes people think back to their childhood. It makes people think back to their little wooden toys or their Taken Plays or their Trackmasters. And it was always fun sharing that love I had with others. I don't really use social media like that anymore at this stage in my life, because I'm kind of stepping back from it for personal reasons. But that's one aspect of it I do miss, talking about the Thomas stuff and having people go, oh, I used to have that, or oh, this takes me back, or man, I wish I could do what you're doing, man, make these YouTube videos, tell these Thomas stories, and people love to be a part of it. A lot of you haven't seen it yet, but a lot of my in real life friends are excited to be a part of it. A lot of them are excited to be involved and voice characters and help me with scripts, help me with filming. And it is a gift that I was given, that we were all given by Wilbert Awdry, Christopher Awdry, the Awdry family, Britt, Allcroft, David Mitton, Andrew Brenner, and the writers at Hidden Entertainment and Mattel. Regardless about how you feel about any of them, Thomas is a gift made by all of them. It's not something that could be credited to just Wilbert Awdry or just David Mitton or anything like that. It is something that was really made by all of them. In a way, I sort of grew up with all of it. Now, obviously, I'm not too partial towards Big World, Big Adventures, or All Engines Go. It's not for me. But, it's all a part of the greater Thomas history. And what Thomas truly means to me, like I said, is it's a gateway to so many things. It is a beautiful piece of children's programming that I care about a lot. And it was very real, Those props on actual sets, doing things that real trains did, stories based on real things that trains did, that stuck with people. And even the more crazier stories like Rusty and the Boulder or Duncan Gets Spooked, they were still grounded in that sense of depth, and you could really feel for these characters and you could believe in the world that they lived in. And that was really beautiful, and that was a really beautiful show. And the craftsmanship behind that show and the craftsmanship behind Leo Henry's videos and Enterprising Engines videos and all the people I previously mentioned is what inspires me to make my series and what inspires me to tell my own Thomas stories, because it's such a rich franchise, and it's something that Mattel will never truly understand. They'll never truly get it, you know what I mean? They're always trying to reinvent it. They're always trying to reinvent the wheel. If you look behind me, you can see some of the greatest Thomas merch ever, and some mediocre ones, and some bizarre ones, and even some customs. But, none of it would be here if not for Wilbert Awdry and Britt Allcroft and all those people. And I wouldn't be here if not for them, because I would be such a different person without Britt Allcroft and David Mitton and Wilbert Awdry and Andrew Brenner and all those people, because I'm a rail fan, of course. I love trams, I love rapid transit, I love Amtrak, I love Conrail, I love the whole American railroading scene, and also railroads around the world, you know, British railroads, Indian railroads, Asian railroads. But I would have never gotten into all of it if not for my love of Thomas. There are some people who live on my same street and forget that there's a train station close to us, or can't even name the nearest train station. And quite frankly, you know, it's something I laugh about sometimes, but I'd probably be the same of them if not for Thomas, because why would I think about the train? Why would I, as an American, think about the train if not for Thomas? And, you know, I got a whole another channel dedicated to rail fanning and dedicated to urban planning and rapid transit. And even though that's marketed as the non-Thomas channel, it wouldn't exist without Thomas either, because again, I wouldn't have this love I have for public transit without Thomas. And that's really why I wanted to make this video, to really tell a bit of my story and also just share how much I love this franchise and how much I care about it and how much I want to see it be good. I don't want it to suck. I didn't even want All Engines Go to suck. I didn't want Bubba to suck, because you don't want to see your favorite show sucking, because the magic that I felt in the 2000s watching those Thomas DVDs and watching Thomas on TV and rips on YouTube, I want other kids to feel that magic, because it's a very special show and it's full of these great characters and this rich world that are just so ripe for the imagination, just so ripe for innovation. I mean, if Mattel or whoever decided that they didn't want to make new Thomas stuff anymore, they just wanted to lightly manage the IP or whatever, then I think Thomas would survive just fine if it was under like a Creative Commons license and people were just allowed to make whatever they wanted under the Thomas name and make it a whole thing and just create what they want to create. Because quite frankly, it's what we've been doing for years, you know, since the early 2000s, late 90s, whatever. This whole Thomas fandom scene, it's been beautiful. And I love this community so much. You could never get me to talk bad about this community. And it's given me so much. It's given me the opportunity to platform my art and actually take myself seriously as an artist and innovate on my skills and do this and that and the third thing. And I really wouldn't be doing any of it if it weren't for my youth, being a small kid, skinny kid with a big head and, you know, the afro, laying stomach down on my living room floor, playing with my Tommy James and my Tommy characters and the wooden railways and the Taken Place sets I had. You know, I wouldn't have the visions that I have now if not for Thomas. And I have Thomas to thank solely for my creativity. Even in the Minecraft stuff or the comic stuff, it all ties back to this guy. And it never really gets any better than this, in my opinion. And I understand people who are like, I can't get behind the reboot. I can't get behind, you know, calling All Engines Go a part of the Thomas legacy. I can't get behind this because of the bouncing. I can't get behind this toy because it doesn't look like what I grew up with. I can understand them to a degree, but I just can't really agree, if you get what I'm saying. I think that this show is meant to evolve, and I think that it's meant to grow, and I think while it would be great if it could stay this way forever, like stay like true to what Awdry and David Mitton and Britt Allcroft and all those people wanted, that would be great. But you also have to remember that these people that I'm grouping together, they all had different visions. Awdry didn't really care much for what David Mitton and Britt Allcroft made. And, you know, David Mitton and Britt Allcroft, I'm sure if they ever got the chance to vocalize it, they would feel a type of way about the stuff that came after them. We don't really know what their true, deep, in-depth opinions are on them, because David Mitton died in 2008 and Britt Allcroft, she only died maybe 2 years ago, but no one really asked her, to my knowledge, her thoughts on the CGI series. But from what I can tell, it's pretty obvious she preferred what she made and what Wilbert Awdry made, of course. But, you know, the vision of Thomas always changes. And I think so long as the framework is respected, I can get behind new iterations of the show. Because obviously, Big World, Big Adventures and All Engines Go faltered because they abandoned the framework, They're still a part of the Thomas story, but they abandoned the framework of it. I just really hope that this new reboot tries or succeeds even at recapturing that sort of magic that I felt watching the original Thomas series and the later seasons of it, and even the animated stuff to a degree, because Thomas has so much depth to it and so much lore and so much love poured into it. But if they can, Transformers this thing up and like do an all new iteration of it that inspires people in a different way, then I'd be willing to get behind that. Because at the end of the day, this is a great franchise, and it's a great franchise built on great morals and great values, and it inspires creativity. And all I really want is for the next generation to be as happy with it as it continues to make me happy. And as far as the future goes, well, I'm still going to be here on YouTube. I've had many phases on YouTube over my adolescence, many different channels of many different names and many different subject matter. But what I can say for certain is that Kagamin's Wonderland, at least this channel as it stands, is here to stay. And I'm going to be making Thomas videos and my Thomas series rolling around on Sodor for a long, long time. It is both a mixture of trying to do something new and trying to do something innovative with this franchise that's so rich and has so many story potentials. It's a mixture of that, and also a mixture of trying to recapture, the fun of just playing with toys and making up your own stories, and recapturing what that little kid me saw looking on his family computer at these people playing with their trains and making up these stories. It's really the same sort of ordeal. And I'm really excited to keep making videos for you guys. And I'm really excited to continue consuming Thomas content, because Thomas content is still the number one thing that I watch on YouTube, pretty much. It's still the number one thing. I mean, I don't watch it as much as I used to as a kid, but that's not really saying much, because as a kid, it was like the only thing I watched, and now I have more interest, if you get what I mean. So it's like the number of Thomas things I watched didn't go down. It's just that, it used to be like this, and now it's like I have this interest now, and this interest now, and this interest, and this interest, and this one, and this one, and that one, and that one. It's like the number didn't go down. It's just like, you grow up, you expand your palette, you like new things, but this will always be my number one thing. And I just can't bring myself to say anything bad about it, because I don't really have those negative feelings about it. It's been really great to share it with others. And, at one point I didn't share it with others. At one point when I was in middle school and elementary school, I know, crazy, right? I was so in the system that I didn't want to be a kid talking about how much I loved a certain kid show. I didn't tell people about my love for it in middle school and elementary school because it was for babies. But then when high school came around, I started telling people about it. There were some jokes, but they understood. They thought it was cool. They thought it was a nice throwback. They appreciated the stuff I made. They thought the art I did was great. And now that I'm an adult in college and sharing that love of Thomas with people, it's even more nostalgic, and it's even more magical, because people are really tapped in and they're really interested, and they think I'm so creative, and I appreciate all these compliments, and they just really love what I do. And I love what I do too. And I hope that I can continue to do this for a really long time, because what Wilbert Awdry and Christopher Awdry believed in, and what David Mitton and Britt Allcroft believed in, and what Andrew Brenner and that whole team at Hit Entertainment and Mattel writing rooms, what they believed in, is the precursor of what I'm trying to do now. And I really am excited for you guys to see what I cook up next. And that's really how we're going to round out today's video. I mean, I could really go on and go on and go on, but I just want to release something very personal for the 81st anniversary of this franchise. I love Thomas so much, and I love this community so much, and I really would not rather be anywhere else or be anyone else. Friends have come and gone, relationships have come and gone, dreams have come and gone, phases of life have passed through here and there, but this has always been a constant, and I think it will always be a constant. And I wish I could end on something clever or inspiring or meaningful, but the truth is I'm just happy because doing this video made me think about all those good times, and not just as a kid, but also right now. So yeah, I really do love Thomas, and it's still my favorite franchise in the world, despite the highs and lows that have happened over the past 10 years or so. Maybe even longer than that if you want to stretch it, but you know, using my lifespan as a threshold, let's just say 10 years or so. So thank you guys so much for watching this and listening to my whole ramble. If you did listen to it, if you're still here, remember I have a Q&A still going on. You could check the description or the pinned comment to leave more question responses on my Q&A. I believe I'm probably going to close it on Friday, maybe. We'll see. It depends on the output of stuff, the output of questions I get. If I get enough questions by that point, I'll close it. But we'll see. We'll see. Thank you again for over 1,000 subscribers. Like I said in this video, this really was my dream. Like, you know, I have a lot of ambitions in the real world, but truthfully, this is what makes me happiest. I'm glad I get to do it. I'm glad I have the freedom to do it. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. More custom showcases to come. Rolling around on Sodor will be coming. That's all I could really say. The writing process is gonna take place largely this year, and hopefully filming can start next year, best case scenario. There's still a lot of customs that need to be done, still a lot of logistical things that need to be looked over, but this series is a long-term endeavor of mine. I'm really excited for you guys to see it. Again, thank you so much for watching. I love you guys so much. What are your favorite memories of Thomas, and what is your Thomas story? Maybe make a video in response to this one, or maybe leave a big long comment for us to read and go back and forth on. But either way, Kagamin Kawa here, or Vance Miller. Love you guys so much. Happy birthday to the Railway series, to Thomas, and hopefully there is another 81 years of this. Who knows? Maybe. But it's been a really great ride so far. Bye, you guys.